I hope everyone's doing well. And what I'm going to do is I am going to go through the presentation. If you have questions, please put them in the chat box. And once I get through the presentation, then I'll go through the chat box and start answering questions for everybody if everybody's okay with that. So I'm going to minimize this. So I just first want to let you know, obviously I'm not an attorney, a CPA, or any, kind of crazy professional like that. So this information is informational and educational only. It's not a substitute for legal advice from a qualified attorney or someone who specializes, in any laws that I may talk about or any tax things or anything like that. So just want to make sure that's clear. Chelsea did a great introduction for me, so I really appreciate that. But just a quick go over. I have multiple streams of investment income. I do Airbnb, I have market rate rentals, single families, multifamilies. I have my real estate license in New York and Pennsylvania. Pretty much if I can make money in real estate, I'm doing it. So tonight is just one part of what, we're going to be doing. So one thing is it looks like everybody's on mute. I just want to make sure we're all on mute, because if you've ever been to any of my classes before, which I don't see anybody that I'm familiar with, but I make you sing "I'm a Little Teapot" if I hear a cell phone ring in my class. So I don't think we're going to have to worry about that tonight, unfortunately, because I thoroughly enjoy watching that. So what I'm going to do for you tonight is I'd really like to go through how to analyze deals, which includes some really important things like after repair value, loan to values, and this is all for 4 units or less. We're going to go over how to comp a property, because I find that on a lot of the forums that I'm on, people just don't, I see a lot of people like, well, how do I know if I should put granite or tile in? What do the comps say? So I'm going to show you how to do comps, how an appraiser does it. We're going to determine how to do accurate rent rates and to do first year operating calculator for your investment and the 6 critical documents. Who can tell me what ARV stands for?
After repair value.
Okay, and how do you come up with after repair value?
I
don't know. It's okay, but you knew. You know what it means. You knew what it stood for, and thank you, Pamela. I appreciate it.
I think what it means is what it would be priced at once you put all the renovation into it, like what the market might value it at.
Yes, perfect. Do you know what the actual calculation is?
Yeah, it's 70%.
Yeah, it can actually be whatever the loan to value is that you're looking for with your bank. So if your bank wants you is going to 70% LTV, you'll do 30%. If they're looking for a 80% LTV, you'll do 20%. So it's going to change based on what your bank is asking you to have in terms of an equity position or a down payment. And since we're talking about buy and hold, we're mainly going to go over the BRRRR strategy. And so that's how I'm going to look at this whole presentation for the BRRRR strategy. Okay. And does anybody not know what LTV is, loan to value? Okay. Oh, we got one. Okay, right next to me, right here. It's so funny. I feel like we're like in a music video or the Brady Bunch boxes, because you're right there. So what LTV is, what banks are going to do is they're going to want you to have a certain equity position in the asset that you are asking them to lend money to you on. So let's say you're going to the bank and you're saying, hey, I'm buying this $100,000 property. What LTV do you need? That'll make you sound very smart, and I'm going to let you all know some cool little ninja ways to make banks think that you've been doing this for years. So you just want to go in and ask them, hey, what LTV are you loaning at? And if they say 75%, you just 75 minus 100 is 25%. So they want you to have either 25% equity in the property or 25% down, which would be $25,000. Okay. Any questions on that? All right.
Thank you for looking it down.
Yes. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is, and I do want to focus some time on this, is how to run comps like an appraiser to determine your after repair value. Now, this does go for 4 units or less. Anything above 5 units or more, they're going to go based on the cash flow of the property. But I am going to assume that most people in this group are looking to learn about BRRRR for 4 units or less. So can anybody tell me what you have to do when you are looking at comps? And if you're a realtor in the group and have been doing comps forever, you're not allowed to answer.
Darn.
So who can tell me what one factor is when looking at comps of a property?
You mean like it should be like in the same area, same neighborhood?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that is perfect. So appraisers are going to generally look in a 5.5 mile radius of the property that you're looking for, and that you're not crossing any major thoroughfares. Okay. Can somebody give me something else? Another metric?
Square footage?
Ooh, yes, square footage. Do you know what percentage square footage they're looking in? What range?
I don't know. Love to learn.
Okay. Yes, definitely. I love that you know square footage. So they're generally looking with a 25% plus or minus square footage. So when you calculate the square footage, you either multiply it by 0.75 to get your low end or 1.25 to get your high end. And that'll keep you within that 25% plus or minus range. What's another metric?
The rooms, like the number of bedrooms and bathrooms.
Yes, that is a great metric. So if you're doing single family, you want to use at least the number of rooms in the house. So say you have a 3-bedroom house, you can use 3 or more. You don't generally want to go down to a 2-bedroom unless you're not finding comps. And then at that point, and we're going to talk a little bit about not being able to find comps and how you handle that situation. With multifamily, they hope to find the same amount of bedrooms. So if you're looking at a duplex and it's at 4 bedrooms, 2 in each, they're looking for 2, but they may be a little more lenient and allow you to do 3 if you're not finding the comps that you need. But we will discuss that. Okay, what else?
The age of the property?
Actually, a lot of places don't look at the age unless there is a huge variance in, like, if one's a new build and another one's 120 years old, they may take that into account. But let's say that you're in an area where all the properties have generally been built in the early 1900s or the 1950s, they're not going to use that as a majority factor in the appraisal for your comps. What else?
This is just a guess. Would they include the school districts, the qualities of the school districts, or that's completely off? Somebody giggled,
No.
so I guess that's off.
No. So some places, what you're going to want to do is, let's say you have a major thoroughfare that's in your half-mile radius, and there's one school district on one side and one school district on the other side. They're actually going to cut you off on that thoroughfare, like a big road, or highway that divides the 2 areas, and they're going to use it on the one side. Sometimes school districts will have a play if it's depending on the location of the property, and then sometimes not. But I'm going to make this a little bit easier for you. The couple of other things that they're going to look at is they're going to look at the style of the property. So let's say that you're looking at single family homes and your single family home is a ranch. What they're going to look at is they look one up and one down. So what that means is there's nothing smaller than a ranch. There's no less floors on a ranch, so that you can go one up. So they can also look at 1.5 stories as comps as well. So if you're not finding all ranches as comps, you can add 1.5 stories in, and the appraisers will accept that. Now, let's say that you have a 2-story single family, they would accept 1.5 stories and 2.5 story properties. Now, if it's a duplex and you have an up and down duplex, but the other ones are all side by side, they may do a variance in the appraisal for that, just because the way that it's one's up and down and one side by side, but it's still a two property or a 2-unit property, so they're still going to use them. And it sometimes what they'll also factor in is the pricing on the units. So if you have a 2-unit, but the rest of the properties are all 3 units, they may have to use a 3-unit and then do a subtraction of one of the units in order to balance out that extra unit with what you're looking at in your duplex. The other one that they're going to look at is the previously sold time frame, and they're generally going to go back 180 days. So what they want to see minimum is 3 sold comparables in a half-mile radius within 25% plus or minus square footage, style, bedrooms, and bathrooms. So bathrooms is another big one. So if you have a duplex that's 2-1 on the bottom and 2-1 on the top, you want to try to find other duplexes that are 2-1 on the bottom and 2-1 on the top. Now, if you're only finding, let's say that your property is 2 and 1.5 on both the top and bottom, but you're only finding comps for 1.5 or other ones that only have 1 property or 1 bathroom, what you'll do is the appraisers would subtract a little bit of value from yours just to even out the playing field to see where it's comping out at. And generally what I do is if my property has more assets to it and I'm trying to bring it down to the level of the other comps, I generally subtract for a half bathroom $2,500 off the price of my property, or $5,000 for another full bathroom. And I know that can seem a little bit confusing. Am I confusing anybody with that information? No, I believe appraisals are.
So I was just asking her, if when you subtract the 2,500 versus the the 5,000, is that specific to the area that you're in, or is that pretty typical wherever you are?
Gotcha. Okay, so so in my area, that would be more typical. In other areas, what you want to make sure is you can either, if you know people who have had appraisals done in your area, see if you can read the reports and see what the appraiser's done for the plus and minus to even out the comps. In my area, you can buy a duplex for $80,000 or $20,000 or $220,000. I generally just use $2,500 and $5,000 because it generally works in my area. But in other areas, it might be $5,000 and $10,000 respectively to move that up and down. So you can always call the appraisers and ask them too. So sure.
Also, you have to also think about typically to build, to fix or redo a half a bath, sometimes they look at the price of how it is. So for like some places here in Maryland, a full bath might be $5,000, $6,000. So you would decrease it in the amount of what it would take to fix that bathroom up or to do a bathroom in a sense. And that's how some of the appraisers look at it.
And that's exactly how I look at it. Is I figure if I wanted to add a half bath, it's about $2,500. If I wanted to add a full bath, it's about, or renovate, really add a full bath in my area, is about $5,000. So if you have a 3-bed, 1 bath, and you're trying to comp out your 3-bed, 1.5 bath, you subtract $5,000 to make it look like your place only has 1 bathroom. Can you see if you can plug me in? Oh, thank you. So any questions on that?
When you're trying to find comps for your property, why are you like subtracting out from the value of your property instead of adding to the value of the comps that you find?
You can do it that way too.
Okay.
Yeah, so as long as you keep it even on what you're doing across the board for that property, you're good to go. You just want to make sure that you're leveling up or leveling down the property. Does that answer your question? Okay, I'm
Yeah, it
assuming
does.
so. Okay, perfect. And then the same thing for garages. If your property doesn't have a garage, take the cost of what it would be, to be build a garage. Or if it's you have your property only has one car, but everything else has two cars, you can add $5,000. The numbers are slightly arbitrary, but if you can get your hands on a few previous appraisals, that's a really, really good way to learn your area. So if you've networked with people in your area, or you have realtors who have done deals that were multifamily or single family, depending on what you're looking at, if they would share some old appraisals with you just so you can see what that form looks like, I would be happy to share mine. But I don't know what areas, what your pricing looks like in your area. So it would really depend on the pricing. But the appraisal documents are uniform across the country. So they should all look the same. It's just a matter of what they're adding and subtracting to make the properties play on the same playing field. Okay, any questions on the term, running the comps like an appraiser? The one last thing that I want to say about that is you don't want to over improve your property. So let's say you get this awesome deal on this duplex, both need to be renovated, and you're like, oh my gosh, should I put in carpet? Should I put in hardwood floor? Should I put in granite? What finishes should I put? You don't even have to guess. Find the comps for that property for the ARV, and the comps will tell you what you should be putting in. Is everybody putting in luxury vinyl tiles? Are people putting in that carpet? If nobody's putting in granite, unless you own a granite company and you're getting scrap granite for free, then put it in. But don't put that in because that's what you think that you would want to rent to, because by over approving your property, you're really going to shoot yourself in the foot. Okay. All righty. So what happens if we can't find comps? Who here has not been able to find comps for their properties? Oh, I got a hand up over here. Anybody else? Chelsea, can you tell us a little bit about the property that you couldn't find comps on?
So when I look for properties, I specifically go to Redfin. I love that website to look for properties. Zillow's okay, and I've kind of gone away from Trulia. So when I was on Redfin, I was looking through the Baltimore area it's probably about a C-class neighborhood. It was a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house, and in the specific area, I couldn't find anything within probably in Baltimore, we built by, I'll say, blocks type. So probably within the 7 or 8 block. To be able to compare to. I don't know how much more information you need.
Oh,
Is that good?
curious.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's it.
So really only seven blocks?
Wow. Yeah.
How far is that? When you say blocks, is that how many miles? Quarter mile?
Ooh, yeah, maybe a little bit more than that. Maybe more than a couple blocks then. Okay. So in Baltimore, it's very sectioned by neighborhood. So in one neighborhood, I could not find
The comps.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
I'd have to go to a different neighborhood or that thoroughfare like you're talking about to get a comp.
Okay, so
I had a similar problem for a property in Florida. I found that it would have huge differences in the ARV depending on the subdivision that you were in. And I could find comps, but there wasn't a single comp. And even expanding the parameters as much as I possibly could, there just weren't comps in that same subdivision that the property was in. And that was one of my really big challenges, is how do I adjust this? I know that this subdivision is more or that this subdivision is less, but I had no way to actually find good comps or to adjust mine to accommodate for that.
did you wind up purchasing that property and getting an appraisal done on it?
I didn't wind up purchasing it, partly because I couldn't figure out whether or not it was actually worth, what I would be putting into it.
Okay. All right. So I just had the same thing happen. I have a client who is buying a side-by-side duplex, and it's almost like two little houses connected to each other, and they both have these big, beautiful garages, big, beautiful new paved driveway, large basement. I mean, just the property is beautiful. And the appraiser called me. He's like, I can't find any comps. And I'm like, aren't you the appraiser? You're supposed to figure this out. So when my client and I were running the comps, I sent him what I found, but he didn't want to use some of them because it was stretching it so much. So the comps actually, it worked out for us because the property was under contract for $156,000. But the comps came back in 152. Now, the way he was talking about not being able to find comps, I thought the property was going to come in at like 102. And I'm like, oh my God, they're never going to accept this. So I'm not sure if he was kind of like freaking out for, very little change. Oh, someone has to sing on a little teapot.
It was the watch, not the phone.
So in that case, what you can do is the appraiser went all over our county to try to find the comps. And the appraisers will, if they are having a difficult time finding in the mileage area, in the square footage area, in the style area, or in the previous sold comps, they will start just going out to the entire county to try to find it. And then we'll make their adjustments based on what they think the values are from this one school district to this other. And that's where those types of parameters will come into play. But I've learned the 80% solution on running comps. So this should get most of you through running most of your comps. There's always going to be that 20% that, oh, we got somebody else who needs to sing on a little teapot. We're all going out to the bar and singing on the little teapot. Or you can all buy me a drink. How's that work? So what you're going to want to do is, if you're not finding comps, even after you expand your research, my best suggestion is try to make friends with an appraiser. If you have a realtor who has an appraiser in their office, talk to that realtor, say, hey, could they just give me a little bit of advice? Could I take them to coffee? Make friends, because this business is more about connections than anything else. So that's for that 20%, you're going to have to use your connections in order to get that information. Okay. Any questions on any of that? Okay. All right. Now, accurate rent rates. So now we're going to get into looking at your BRRRR property. So let's say we're looking at a duplex and it has 2 beds, 1 bath. Can someone tell me what they're using right now to find what rent rates are and how they're doing it?
Hotpads.com or Zillow.
Okay.
Zillow has the rental calculator.
Mm-hmm.
Asking my realtor or a property manager.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
Use the website called Rent-O-Meter.
Yep, that's what I use.
What did she say?
Rent-O-Meter. So if you didn't hear what she said, it's called Rent-O-Meter or Rentometer, however your emphasis on the syllables are, or syllable, however. I'm doing a throwback to what's his name? Austin Powers. There you go. the wrong emphasis on the syllable. Anyway, I like to make myself laugh. I don't know. So now I don't even know what I'm talking about. I totally Rent-O-Meter. There we go. All right, I'm back in it. So you can use Rent-O-Meter. That's what I use first. Essentially, you go in there. They let you do so many polls on the rent comps. You can sign up for a pro account too and do as many as you want. But once you get into your area that you're in, and you continue to buy in that area, you're eventually just going to innately know what they are. Now, I check every now and again, because what I do is I price my rentals a little bit higher than what everybody else has, just to test the market and see if anybody would rent from me. And if within the first 3 or 4 days, I don't have at least 25 people who are inquiring, I know that I'm way too high, and then I'll bump it down. So that's how I check my properties. to see, what they are and maximize the amount of. Unmute yourself. Or mute yourself. There you go. Okay. I did unmute it. So that's what I use. But then I go on to Zillow, Redfin, Craigslist. You can even ask if you're in a landlord group. You can go in there as well. If you have a kick-ass landlord friend, send them the images or just tell them the address and what the makeup and what the property looks like. On the inside, is it dated? Is it updated? And they'll be able to help you out.
I have a question.
Sure.
So how much higher would you recommend going if you're going to try to test the market? And then how long do you leave it? You said 3 or 4 days up, and then you drop it a little bit lower, or then do you just go straight down? What's your kind of strategy of playing the market?
So what I'll do is I will list it. So to give you an example, I have a 2-bedroom townhome that's almost fully renovated. The only thing that's not renovated is the kitchen cabinets are still the same, and the bathroom cabinet is still the same. But everything else is new. All the light fixtures, all new stainless steel appliances, new flooring, everything. So generally those are renting around $725. I put mine up for $795, and I was able to rent it. So in a day, one day, I rented it. So it might be because of the time frame, because we're coming off of the rental season. So all the rentals that are left right now are either crap or super expensive. So mine just happened to be this real sweet spot where it wasn't crap and it wasn't super expensive. So the guy was like, I need this right now. I'm moving in on Monday. And I asked him, I'm like, why'd you wait so long to find an apartment? He's like, I didn't. I've been looking for the past month and I could not find anything that I wanted. And then yours popped up, and he immediately gave me an application, a deposit, and did everything. So
Good job.
It just happened to work out for me. But in the summer, those properties, I'll have 100 inquiries in 3 or 4 days. So because I'm just in this weird little sweet spot, I'm not so renovated with granite countertops and the pool and all these amenities. But I'm not at the bottom either, where I still have brown Berber carpet, wood paneling, things like that. So I'm just in this, this middle ground. And I didn't plan it that way. It just kind of happened organically. So
I do want to ask,
yeah.
Is there a certain kind of feature or an upgrade that seems to be a sweet spot where you can, rent it a little higher than the others?
Great question. Kitchens and bathrooms. And clean. I will tell you, I don't care how beautiful your kitchen and bathroom looks like. If your paneling looks like crap, if you have gold fixtures still in there. Now in some markets, if everybody still has gold fixtures and all the properties are renting for $450, fine, whatever. But if you can do some sizzle features, look at what everybody else has for rent. And let's say everybody else has, the older carpet, the paneling, things like that. If you were to change just minimal things, like do a single arch faucet, with a pull down in your kitchen, change all the handles to the nice 3-inch modern bar. And you can get all this stuff on Amazon. I should give you all, can you make a note to write down to send the white list of products I use in my rentals that I add to all of them? No matter what grade of rental I have, I add these.
Home Depot's best friend too.
Yeah, between Home Depot, Lowe's, and Amazon, I can tell you where to get the best looking things for the cheapest price. So I have Alex writing it down, and then what I'll do is, I'm sure there's you can email this out to people. If I take a little bit to get it to you, I'm sorry, but I promise that I will eventually get you a white list for the property. For the property upgrades that you can do that don't cost a lot but make a big impact. I call them sizzle features. I learned it from somewhere. So they're just little sizzle features because they're just better than what other people have. But when people walk in, they're like, ooh, I love this faucet. Or, ooh, these really nice pulls, like they notice the difference. Okay. And then someone else had a question. Carolina, did you have a question? Oh, you're muted.
No, that was my question.
Okay, perfect. Kitchens and bathrooms and cleanliness. Kitchens, bathrooms, cleanliness. Okay. All right. So let's see what we got here. So accurate rents. Okay, so now I want to move into your first year operating calculator, and I'm going to share my screen on this one because it just gets, and I'll share this calculator, so please don't worry about, you know, writing all of this down. I'm going to freely share everything I talk about with you tonight. So let me share my screen. So when you're doing a BRRRR, essentially what you're going to do is the way you're going to figure out what your offers are and whether it works for you, because there's two parameters you're going to look at. You're going to need to know what your offer is going to need to be, because you don't want to over offer if you're doing traditional bank financing. Now, we go into creative financing, that's a whole other ball of wax, so I'm just going to stick with this financing. If anybody has questions on super duper creative stuff and how this changes the calculator, feel free to shoot me a message and I can talk about that at another time. So what you want to do is you want to first figure out, all right, you figured out your property is worth $100,000 and you know that your bank is asking for an 80% LTV. So you know that you can't pay any more with your repairs and purchase price than $80,000. Now let's say that you went down your list and you figured out that you have $20,000 in repairs, okay? So you subtract $20,000 from $80,000, now you're at $60,000. So the maximum allowable offer you can do is $60,000 on that property because you're taking into account your repairs and your equity position that you need, so you don't have to bring any cash to the table. The reason you're doing that is because when you do a BRRRR strategy, you're trying to force the appreciation in the property so that you don't have to bring any cash money out of pocket other than your renovation and purchase, you know, how you're doing that, so that when you refinance. Now, I didn't get to join the previous one. Did she talk about using hard money and private money lenders in one? Okay. So generally with the BRRRR process, you're going to use private money, hard money, cash to buy the properties, and you're going to want to, you know, update the properties as quickly as you can so that you can refinance without bringing any money to the table. So you borrowed 100% of your purchase and repair from a hard money or a private money lender, and then in 6 months to a year, you are now refinancing because you did all these improvements, you increased rent, you have it rented, you seasoned the property, and now you're going to the bank and saying, hey, this property is worth $100,000 now, and you only borrowed 80. So when you refinance, you never had to bring that spread. Okay, so that's why the BRRRR is the way it is. It's almost like doing a flip, except you're keeping it, and you're keeping that 20% or 20,000 or whatever that LTV is for that property for yourself. Okay.
Do you have a lot of success finding funding that will do 100% of the purchase and 100% of the rehab?
Yes, most private lenders will do it. Hard money won't.
Okay.
Okay. So private lenders are individuals that you know from your group, you know, whoever, and hard money, it's generally a company. So they want to make sure that you have some skin in the game, but people that you know, like, and trust, you're generally not going to screw over and take their money. And that's a whole other presentation about how to do private money lending and protecting people. In fact, I have that recorded. So can you write that down that I make sure I share that too? The link to the private money or the private lending. I have a private lending presentation recorded that you can all listen to, and that'll all help you determine what would be the best option for you. So going into the first year of operating income, the reason we want to do this is you want to know, okay, so after I renovate the property and after I get new tenants in the property, is this property going to cash flow what I want? So tell me what you all are looking for your cash flow to be minimum. Anybody?
At least 100 right now.
Okay.
But ideally 200 to 500. Because
Okay.
I'm new, so starting off, I'm really trying to hit the 100 mark for a first couple, and then really focus on, okay, hopefully getting better at this, and I'd like to move into kind of that 200 to 500 range.
Okay. Perfect. Anybody else? Is everybody else kind of in agreement with Chelsea?
Well, I have a question. When Chelsea says 100, 200, 500, she's talking dollars or percentage of something? What is she?
Dollars.
speaking about?
$200 per door.
Okay.
Okay.
Looks like we have Natalie had said 500.
Okay. Okay, so on this calculator, what you're going to do is you're going to take everything that you need to operate the property, add that to what your mortgage is, and then it's going to tell you what your net per door income is. Okay, so the big things that you want to do is you want to have your let me see if I can zoom this a little bit. No, it's not letting me zoom. So you'll have your gross scheduled rent. So in this case, it's a 2-unit that has 2 that are getting $600 each. Vacancies, you always want to do I always do a very conservative view on my operating projection when I first run it. I rarely have a 10% vacancy, but the banks, sometimes when they look at your numbers, they're going to run it as if you do. I drop mine down to 5% for my numbers, and I run it at 10% to make sure it's going to meet the bank's numbers. So I always do 10%. Between legal, advertising, and cleaning, I really don't add those in because they're generally so minimal. And then I just put a little miscellaneous in there to cover all of those. The other thing that I have, people are like, well, I have no idea what the insurance is going to be. And I'm like, well, do you know what the property address is that you're looking for? And they say, yeah. I'm like, all right, well, call your insurance agency and say, hey, I'm looking at purchasing this property. What would the insurance be on this? And they will give you a quote. There, boom, now you have a number that's a hard number that you know is not going to waver. So you can accurately run these numbers. Now, I'm going to give you a ninja nugget. When you are asking for financing from a bank, you want to ask them, do they want replacement cost or cash value when it comes to your insurance policy? The difference between cash value and replacement cost is this, and I'm going to give you an example to show you. I had a property that I bought for $70,000. It was a 4-unit. I was with Wells Fargo, and they required replacement cost. The insurance company came out. The replacement cost for that property was $888,000. So my insurance was based on an $888,000 property, not my $70,000 property. So my insurance was close to $3,000 for just a stupid little 4-unit. Okay. Now, then I found out about this thing called cash value. And when you go with local banks or regional banks, smaller banks, you can ask them, or once you get into commercial lending, they're going to do it on cash value. So I was like, oh, okay. So I refinanced out of Wells Fargo into a local bank that allowed me to do cash value. So I put a policy of $90,000, which dropped my premium to $450. That's why it's so important to get all these numbers right, because what can kill or make a deal is one number being incorrect like that. $3,000 to a $500 difference. There's all your cash flow. So if you're running your numbers based on replacement cost, but your bank will actually let you do cash value, you may be just skipping all these deals because you don't know that you could be doing it this other way, and your numbers will look so much nicer if your insurance policy is that much lower. So I recommend, if you can't find a bank that doesn't do cash value, find another one. Any questions on that?
So can I just clarify that?
Sure.
That was a really good tidbit. So this would be for so your bank would go out, they would specify whether or not your insurance company premium would be based on replacement or cash. Okay, so it's not based on the insurance policy.
The bank requires you to either have replacement value policy or cash value policy. And they will tell you in the mortgage what they require. So when you go to your insurance company, you tell them, hey, my bank's allowing me to do cash value. So you're keeping in line with the terms of the mortgage, then you can do cash value. But if you try to do cash value, the bank finds out that you did. Now you're going against what your mortgage, what you signed your life away for. Don't do that. Just find a bank that. Now, let's say that you can't find a bank. Fine. Just run your numbers and make sure that the numbers still make sense, even if you are doing replacement cost, but get an accurate replacement cost from the insurance company. Okay. And you want to put this in the numbers because $2,500 a year is a huge difference to your cash flow monthly. So the next thing you want to do is, I always tell people to put in a percentage of property management, and for smaller unit size, you're going to be about 10%. And the reason I do this is because I like to stress test all of my properties. Once I buy a property for myself, I remove that 10% because all my stuff is self-managed and most of it is automated. I don't have to do a lot of work for my properties. So I won't pay a property manager to do that. I'd rather hire internally and teach somebody and pay them to do it. So maybe, now that I have an executive administrator, maybe I'll change that to 5% to cover what she's going to do for my properties. The next thing is property taxes. That's a static number. You're going to know what that number is when you go on the property card, when you get the MLS listing from your realtor. You should be able to find that out, and they generally have it listed on Redfin, Zillow, what that number is. Water, sewer, electric, and garbage. This is a fun one because it's different in different places. Some places, water, sewer, garbage, it's the tendency that the tradition is the owner pays for that. In some places, it's not. So you need to find out who is paying for it. And if it's the owner paying for it, why? Is it because the property is not split out or separately metered? Does the municipality allow you to separately meter? Can you get it separately metered? How much does it cost to put in the separate meters? Where I'm at, for me to do a duplex, it's $500 or $600 to separate the meters and the residents to get their own bills. And I do that all the time because that's less paperwork and headache on my end. I tell people I'm lazy, it's because I want to do the least amount of work for the most amount of profit in these. So I want to put as much as I can on the residents. And then when it comes to stuff that I actually do for the residents, I want to shine. I want to make sure that my maintenance is epic. I want to make sure that turnaround is epic. I want to make sure that I can provide whatever amenities that I can to them. So I want to focus on the stuff that'll make their lives more comfortable. And I let them focus on the stuff that just annoys
makes my
me.
life comfortable, my money.
Yeah, makes my life more comfortable. My money.
I wouldn't call that lazy. I would call it smart.
Smarter, not harder. So you want to find out what the utilities are, who's paying for it, and if it's something that you're going to pay, see if you can get the trailing numbers. So what the last 12 months of those costs were. Sometimes the utility companies will give you the money give you the information if you call them and you're really nice. Sometimes they won't divulge that information and you have to try to get it from the owner. Never believe the information that the owner gives you. Verify. So if you can't verify it, consider it's crap and go get the numbers yourself. So always verify what the owners give you because they're always going to try to tell you, oh, it's not this much, or I don't spend this much in maintenance. Well, yeah, the reason you don't spend that much in maintenance is because you're the one going and turning the screwdriver. I don't want to turn the screwdriver, so I have to figure out how much my maintenance is going to be. And discussing repairs and maintenance, I do that based off the age of the building. So if you're in an A-class property, that means it's a brand new building, best amenities, it's within 10 years old, you need minimal maintenance on that. That's going to be more, groundskeeping, landscaping, things like that, like contract services. But let's say you're at a C-class property, there's deferred maintenance, the property's a little bit older, it's kind of like in a lower middle-class working area. You might need 10 or 15% maintenance number. Find what works for you and use that number consistently over running your numbers so that you can start to see a trend and know what it is that you're looking at when it comes to the repair and maintenance. Okay. So do I have any questions on any of those operating costs?
When you're saying if it's a C property, you might need like 10 or 15%.
Yes.
What are the percentages that you use for the A and the B?
So I don't have any A properties. So for B and C, so my B properties, I use 5%, and my C, it would vary between 10 and 15. Just depends how large the property is. So if I had like an 8 unit that was a C, I would use a little bit higher because it's likely that more things are going to go wrong. Smaller property, a little bit less. Any other questions?
Can you explain what the difference is between A, B, and C?
Yes. So A would be like the super new properties that they're building all over Florida. I don't know who else is having a building boom. Nashville, I think. All those new, huge 500 unit complexes, those are going to be A because they're only 10 years, if that 10 years old. So they have the newest amenities, the newest color schemes, they're modernized everything. They have tons of amenities. They have the pool, the workout center, all of those places. Now, if we flip the script and go to a D property, that's going to be in your war zone. That's going to be tenants who are paying cash only. You're going to have a high amount of turnover in those properties. There's going to be significant deferred maintenance. And then if you look at C and B, sometimes you can turn a C into a B. All right, and that's where the sweet spot on BRRRRs is. So you're looking for middle class, blue collar, maybe an up and coming neighborhood, or it's in that transition area, and you think you may see one or two other properties that are renting a little bit higher, but most of them still are lower. But if you can see a couple of those comps that are moving a little bit higher, you might be able to do the same fixtures as them and bring it up to that B- or B status. Okay. Any other questions on that? Okay. So then what you're going to do is you're going to add your total operating expenses, and you'll have your gross income, and it'll give you your net income minus the mortgage, and that's your cash flow. So on this deal that I was looking at, if you look here, it has $186 in cash flow monthly for the 2 units. So it's not great, but can I produce this vacancy? Yeah, I can. And once I do that, that number hits my $100 per door minimum that I'm looking for. So that's why I do one that stress tests it. Okay, will it still make money even if I stress test it? And stress testing essentially means putting these numbers higher and giving a view out into the future. If everything, crap hit the fan, am I still going to be solvent in this property? So you do these numbers higher than what the actual is going to be. And then I do a reality calculator. So I just have this all on, Excel or Google Sheets, and I make tabs for each of my analysis for the property. So I'll do an as-is analysis, I'll do a bank analysis, and then I'll do my reality analysis.
So when you do this analysis, you don't have a space for capital expenditures or stuff that you're saving for capital expenditures? Or?
Not on the smaller properties, I don't.
Okay.
But you can. And that's a great question. I'm super glad that you brought that up. So in larger properties, when you're running the numbers, they actually require you to have capital expenditures because that's what the loans require. They require you to have money saved in bank as a cushion for expenditures that are going to come out annually, and they require you to have a certain percentage based on either the property or the income of the property for CapEx. And what CapEx is, that's your roof replacement. These are the things that happen every 15 to 20 years. Roof replacement, window replacement, hot water tanks, boiler systems, air conditioner units, items like that aren't, changing every year, like a carpet, paint. I have that all fall into my repairs and maintenance. Any other questions?
Yes. You do all of this number of calculations prior to even pushing to get this property, correct?
Yeah, I don't.
So say you find a property and you're like, oh, I like this property. You ran all of your numbers so that way when you're ready to offer, you can just do.
Yeah. So I run way more calculators than I do buy properties. So everything that I'm telling you tonight, that's taking me an hour to tell you, I do in about 10 minutes. And once you start doing it, you're just like, all right, I'm done. Okay, yeah, I can buy this property. I can't. And I don't even go to the inside of properties until I run my numbers. Because I can look at the repair analysis, I know the neighborhoods, and you'll start getting that. Now, what I would recommend for all of you is, if you're not familiar with your neighborhoods, go to the properties and look at it and see if you're like, oh, you know what, this does have a lot of deferred maintenance, because sometimes the pictures make the properties look great. And then other times pictures make the properties look like crap and they're beautiful. So you don't want to assume one way or the other without going to the property and actually looking at it. And the same with the comps. Until you're familiar with your area, you should be driving by your comps or walking through them if you can. So, because until you walk through, you know, as many as I have in my area, I mean, I still will drive sometimes if I'm unfamiliar with the comps, you know, and they're just not jiving the way I want them to. I'll still do that type of an exercise. But for everybody learning, go mystery shop. You know, if you see a property, a duplex down the street that's online that looks beautiful and they're getting $900, but everything else is $700, and you're like, why is that? Hi, I'm looking to rent an apartment, and go with your whoever, your friend. I mean, Alex and I, we went looking for apartments, and I took my admin because too many people know me in my area. So I'm like, oh, I'm just helping my friend. And so she had her whole story, because no one's ever going to remember you until you get, you know, bigger, and then you have to bring somebody with you. So go and walk through the properties, get a feel, see what sizzle features they're putting in, you know, look and see if you can add things, and get a little fun and have fun and be creative with it sometimes. Now, not so creative that you're putting up pink walls and, you know, brass fixtures. Don't do that. But see what everybody else is doing in your area, and that's part of running comps. Okay, so did I answer your question?
Yeah. But another question: with your expertise, what is the most that you feel that you would spend on a burr? Like what in a buy and hold? What would you spend on what is the most expensive purchase? I guess that you had to purchase, and was it a good purchase in the end?
Even a bad purchase when you're burring is a good purchase if you hold it long enough. I've been kicked in the teeth with so many of my properties, but I just happen to hold them long enough, and then I learned other ways in real estate to make money, and so far they've all worked out for me, even though like I have banged my head against the wall. I have felt like what the heck am I doing? Why am I putting myself through this? Tears, like self-doubt. I mean, you know, I have hit the lowest of lows when it comes to some of this stuff, because some of it's really taxing and you're like, it's never ending. But eventually you learn a little nugget and you're like, oh, I wonder if I could turn this nugget into another nugget. So I bought D+ properties, and I bought them for $90,000 total this summer, and that was in 2014. This summer I sold them for almost $300,000. But it's because I held them a little bit longer. I learned about land contracts, so I land contracted to someone else so that he would take over all the management, and I was just getting the money for it. And then once he improved the property, so there's still meat on the bone for him to improve his property, he refinanced it out of me, so he burred my burr. That sounds a little dirty. So he burred my burr, and then it just kind of kept paying forward. And so I made money, he made money, the banks made money, everybody made money, everybody was happy. So it worked out. And then I found out that the property's actually appraised for almost $500,000. So then I was like, oh my God, this is insane. From these $90,000 little 8 units to $300,000 to $500,000. It just, in that area, is just insane to me. But I held it, and I figured it out. And that's why connecting with other people who have done this, and I'm not saying, you know, find a mentor, but like make friends, like hang out with people that you actually enjoy having a beer with. And
Hi, Chelsea.
We got a few people here. Maybe at some point we'll all meet.
And I was gonna say, you can all come next time if you want.
I might come next time, you know, and see. So connection is really one of the biggest things that you can do for your success in real estate. I didn't really understand it until it started all to kind of gel, and now I really, really see it. So now I'm kind of off on my tangent. So I want to jump into.
Before you do, can I ask a
Yes.
question? So we had a
Yes.
question from Rose. What neighborhood class do you recommend for first-time home buyers who plan on house hack? And then her next question was, how do we determine BC neighborhoods?
How do you
How do you determine what class the neighborhood is? She specifically asked towards BC, but I think the generic question was A, B, C, or D.
Baltimore City, an F.
That's not true. Don't listen to her. There are good nuggets. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so for house hacking, great question. Move somewhere where you would want to move and be comfortable living. Don't move somewhere where you're gritting your teeth all the time. You're like, oh God, I can't believe I gotta draw it and deal with this. Go somewhere that you want to be, that you like, enjoy life and house hack and make money, and then move out of there and do it all over again. And the way that you determine, there's a little bit of variable between B and C. B is going to be a little bit newer. It's going to be, a little less crime. It's going to be a little bit of a higher, maybe a higher blue collar or lower end white collar area. You just want to look at how the area is taken care of. And there are nuggets. So where I'm at, you can go from one street to another and it's completely different. And then from one little neighborhood pocket to another. But there's a general trend that as you go from, because I'm in Erie, Pennsylvania, as you go from the lake south, it gets better and better and better and better. So there's a general trend, but if you can't afford, this area down here where it's more A, or B plus, well then go into the B minus area where it's still, where you see people who have a lot of home ownership. That's a good spot. So if you can find a duplex where there's a lot of people who are not renters but owners, that's a great spot to be, because people who own their homes in a B area or even a C plus area, they have a little bit more pride in their ownership rather than, people who are buying in C properties who are buying out of state and they're just letting their rentals make them money while the rental is falling apart and has deferred maintenance. So it's really your comfort level, what you're approved for, and how you want to do your house hacking. Does that help?
Would a suggestion be far as homes, I know for homes that are in the Catonsville, the Dundalk, there are certain areas where the outside might not look so appealing, but they've really done the inside really nice. And for the most part, it's mostly homeowners. And say they're like a rural townhomes. Everyone's really a homeowner. Everyone will know each other. The outside you might drive but you go inside and it's kind of like, wow, okay. But you know that you wouldn't have a problem living there. And I would probably consider that as a B. To me, an A is brand spanking new. Everything's really nice, tip top shape from outside in, perfect landscape. Everything's superb. But to me, a B is kind of okay. The outside needs some work. It might be a brick front. It's not really that appealing. But to me, a C is okay. The schools, it starts where it's certain things start dwindling, because you have to also, and it also depends on who you are. Who are you looking to be your clients? If you're looking at marriage, family, you got to think of what they would need. So that way you're able to bring in what it is they need. If you're looking for a family, and you know that, okay, me per se, I have family. So I look at dimension, square footage of a room. I'm looking at closet sizes, and I'm looking at how things are laid out, open space or whatever the case may be. So that's how certain people will look at it. So you're just oh, it's a single person. They're not really looking for they just want to hit a roof over their head. So they're worried about something nice. A bachelor, they might want something nice, like down here in Canton. So it's just depending on who you are.
What I would recommend is don't worry about A, B, C, or D. If you're going to house hack or burr, do it in an area that you're comfortable in and that is meeting the numbers that you want it to meet, and that the ARVs are meeting what you want to meet. Don't even worry about A, B, and C, and D. Now, if you want to sound cool, you can say A, B, C, and D. And you can find the definitions online. They have the specific definitions. But really do in your gut if you're just starting out, do a place that you walk up to it, and it calls to you. I mean, I love Cape Cods. I just think they're cute. They rent easy. So do something that you actually look forward to improving and excites you. Don't buy something because it's cheap. That's what I did with my first one, the ones that I just sold, and those kicked me in the teeth. Now I learned it. Let me tell you, I got a master's degree in property management and tenant management over that. But now I can teach you all so that you don't need to do that. But just had weird layouts, like stairs were kind of wonky. It was in a kind of an industrial area with like 4 houses on this one block, but everything else around it was companies and buildings and things. So go somewhere that you want to live and like. It sounds subjective, but that's really the best way I would say to start. Okay. Any other questions?
So I think that brought up a good point, and I don't think we touched on it all, but depending on what neighborhood you get is the type of tenant you're also going to get.
Mm-hmm.
So from that property manager perspective, you both were hitting on it of just make sure that you're willing to deal with those types of people or hire a property manager.
Mm-hmm.
But make sure your property manager is willing to manage the property in that type of neighborhood. In Baltimore City specifically, a lot of property managers won't manage properties in your war zones. They won't manage properties in the D, sometimes even C areas. So just be careful with that.
Yeah. And one thing that you brought up with that too, I always hear people say, oh, I can't wait to have A-class property. It's going to be so easy. Okay, no, it is not.
No, they bougie as I don't know what, they want certain stuff.
Thank you. Because I was in property management for several years, and I dealt with C-class, A-class, B, all of them. And I will tell you, the A-class, the higher-end clients, they are I'm going to get my attorney, and I'm going to do this, and I deserve this, so and they're the ones who the men are the ones who tend to kill themselves in their units. I don't know what it is about A-class properties and that, but it happens. It sounds crazy, but I've been there, done that. So you have to pick your poison. Just because one is, higher and expensive, when it comes to more zeros, that's just more zeros. There's same problems. There's still problems. It's just which problems you're having. Do people are they bugging you because they want to pay, with cash? That's like your C and D properties, or they threaten you with their lawyer because of you don't put the right paint color on the wall. Who knows? So pick your poison. There are problems across the board. And if you can't find a property manager, make one yourself. Hire somebody under you, train them how you want your properties to be run, and, flourish that way. Okay. Because it's a lot easier to manage somebody under you than it is to manage a third party vendor who has 700 units that they're also getting. What I call property managers is problem managers. The only calls they're getting 2 types of phone calls: tenants bitching, owners bitching. They're never getting any thank you, you're doing an epic job. So if you hire someone on the inside, it's a lot easier to manage that whole situation, but that's just my 2 cents. So
Yep, so 9 o'clock in the morning, they're ready to go.
Yeah. Okay, so if you have no other questions on running the operating, the last thing I want to talk about is managing your renovations. So the way you're going to manage your renovations is these 6 critical documents. And I have these on my website for sale, but I'm going to give them to everybody. I'm going to send out a code that you could put in to download them for free. Okay. Because you really, 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 I cannot stress enough. Everyone thinks tenants are issues when you're a landlord, and that is not the case. It is contractors.
I would contractors too, yes. IRS is
She's
too.
like the IRS. I'm like, no, oh yeah, contractors. So contractors are 100% just, ooh, that's a whole other, but I'm going to get you through with these. So the first thing that you're going to want from your contractor before you do anything is you want a W-9, so that when you pay them, you can file your 1099 MISC at the end of the year. And that gives you their name, their EIN or their social, their address. It just gives you, and get a copy of their driver's license too. Now, some contractors who are larger, well-known contractors will kind of look at you and laugh. It's the smaller contractors sometimes that you really want to worry about with this, because big established companies are doing this. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in business. Okay. So the two huge ones that you always want to have are the next two: the independent contractor agreement and the scope of work. The independent contractor agreement. Okay, so let's take an actor, for instance. So we all know that an actor has a script, and on that script it has their lines, it has stage directions, it has lights fading in and out. That's your scope of work. That's you telling them, okay, you're going to use this laminate from Lowe's, you're going to use this vinyl plank, this is the item number, this is everything that you're going to use. So that's their script. The contract is how they get paid. So if Leonardo DiCaprio is getting $10.6 million for whatever movie he's doing, that is what the independent contractor agreement is. It's the handshake agreement of how you're going to respect each other and work with each other. So like in mine, and you'll see when you download it, like I put that you're not allowed to talk to any tenants. You're not allowed to let anybody walk through the property while you're doing anything. Everything has to be broom swept at the end of every day, because if I have my investors come walk through because I want to show them the progress on that property, and I go in there and it looks like a shithole, like, excuse me, I am not going to be happy camper. And if I find a cigarette butt, ooh, goodness, it's not going to work. So this is how you tell them how they need to act on your property. Now, if this scares them, they were not the contractor for you. Okay. Scope of work. Why this is important is you want to make sure that they are doing everything how they should do it. I've had contractors do some of the craziest things. And so another thing that I tell them, I brief them on the first day. I say, if the words I think ever cross your mind, you stop whatever it is you are thinking about and you call me. Because I do not pay my contractors to think, I pay them to do. And if I forgot to put something in my scope of work where it was not clear on what they needed to do to move forward, they do not move forward, they call me. Because what's going to happen is they're going to be like, well, I think it should look like this. You're going to come in, find that your faucet in your shower, so say this is your shower and my head is the middle, they put your faucet here instead of here. Because there was something here that could have been moved really easily. But they're like, oh, we're just going to take a shortcut. And then when I come back, I'm like, no, that's not right. So now I have to do all this work and move it to here. Okay, and I tell them, like, you don't think. I think. You do. Okay? Mm-hmm. It's very important. And as ladies, I don't care. Let them think that you're a bitch. Because if being a bitch means that you're getting shit done, that's just how it's going to be. Mm-hmm. And if they can't deal with you managing your renovation like a business person, they need to walk off. Mm-hmm. And you don't deal with them again. And then you tell all your other lady friends they're on the blacklist and they don't use them either. So it's all of our connections. We don't work to compete against each other. We work to collaborate with each other and help each other. A rising tide raises all ships. Mm-hmm. All right. So the next thing is the insurance indemnification agreement. That's essentially saying that if anything happens to any of the contractor's employees or subcontractors, that it does not come back on you, that they have the proper insurance they need to cover anything that happens under them. All right. Payment schedule, huge. If you take one thing away from this whole presentation, do not pay contractors up front. Ever. Don't do it. Why? You're going to be like, well, wait, don't they need to buy stuff? No, they don't, because you're buying it all. You'll have everything in the scope of work of what it's going to look like. You might put pictures in your scope of work so that you can give them an idea of what the bathroom, you want them to see your vision. So you want to be as in-depth as possible, like a director. You want to know, okay, I want this light fading in from here so that it glistens off of this person. Like, you want to get to that point. And so I found that printing out pictures of what I want things to look like so that they can see what it's going to look like, because they don't have the vision that you have. Otherwise, they would be doing what we do. You want to give them that vision. And the best vision is pictures. So payment schedule. You are going to tell them a payment schedule either based on phase, based on week, based on 2 weeks. And by phase, I mean if you're going through a full gut, it could be, tear out and gut, they get paid X. And then drywall, framing, just the shell is complete. Okay, that's the next payment schedule, and so on and so forth. Or you can tell them, you can write everything down in your scope of work and draw a line and be like, okay, when all of these are done, paid. When all of these are done, paid. Another thing you can do inside your independent contractor agreement, tell them for every day that they're done ahead of schedule, they get a $100 bonus. Because contractors generally tend to go overtime, so we want them to go under time. So you want to give them something to work towards. And then the final thing is mechanics lien waiver. Essentially, when they are done their work and you're handing them that final paycheck, you have them sign a mechanics lien waiver. And essentially what that says is you have paid them for everything that they've done, and they are waiving all rights because they agree that you've paid them. They're waiving all rights to put any liens on you or the property for lack of payment. So this is all cover your butt stuff. Okay. When you're new in this, you're going to have to go site visit every day. It's annoying, it sucks. But when you're new and you don't have a vetted contractor that you know, like, and trust, you have to go every day. And it's like with little kids. Okay, did you clean your room? Did you do the dishes? Did you put your socks away? You have to go and be like, okay, why is that not done? Why is this? Because they are going to not think to call and ask you certain things. And by going every day, you're going to avoid the I think mistakes that they are making before they make them. So you just walk through, see what they're doing, and then go forward. Now, if you're just doing a lipstick renovation, you're just doing, some light fixtures and some painting and some carpets, not too bad. But if you're doing full kitchen, full bath renovations, you're going to want to go check in on that. But as you build a relationship with your contractor, you'll probably be able to go less and less because you'll probably start noticing that you're going to start doing the same types of properties and the same types of fixtures, and you're going to get to know each other. All of this, it's almost like dating. Mm-hmm. Like, you're not going to all just know how to work together. You build that over time. Mm-hmm. Don't expect a contractor to come in and know exactly what they're going to, what they're doing, unless you're paying the most high-end contractors who take forever to get to. And here's a little ninja tip as well. If you call a contractor and they say they can start tomorrow, but nobody else can start in 4 weeks, don't use that contractor. They are not a contractor. Mm-hmm. If they were, they would have jobs. Mm-hmm. And they would say 3 weeks out. So you're okay with 3 weeks out, but don't trust that person. Okay? Don't work with that person.
Just one more.
Oh. You can unplug me if you want. Okay. So those are kind of like the basics, or maybe more than basic, that I have. So I'm going to open it up for questions now, to clarify anything that you may all be curious about. All right. So, and I'm going to look at the questions that are in the chat as well.
When you were talking about the evaluating whether or not to purchase a property, do you use like the 1% rule or the 2% rule or anything like that?
Nope. No. I like to look at cash on cash, because cash on cash is really where the money's at. If you can get a high cash on cash, so if you put no money in to a property, you're getting an exponential cash on cash return. What cash on cash return is how much money you put in and how much it's making you. But if you put no money in and you're making money, you can't even evaluate what your cash on cash is, because you were able to make money off of not using any of your own money. So I like to use cash on cash. I can get like 12, 15, 16%. That's where I'm looking at. But I really want a minimum of $100 a door. And then go ahead.
So I have a friend who's also an investor, and one of the things that she said to me is that, of course, she does her daily walks through the properties, but one of the things she said is that she will not let the contractor go by materials on their own, that she says that she actually goes with them and buys the materials. And I kind of wanted to get your input as far as how you know, what your approach is for that same scenario.
Yeah, great question. I actually buy them, and sometimes what I'll do is I'll go on Lowe's or Home Depot and I'll do an internet order, and then when it's ready to be picked up, I'll tell my contractors to go pick it up. My contractors have no say in materials. Now, okay, do they have say in, you know, like what drywall mud? Yeah, fine. But when it comes to the look of the property and the design of it, they have no part of that. So, yeah, I wouldn't even go with my contractors. I would just have it all ready there for them to pick up.
So we had another question. What if the property is out of state? How do you do your site visits daily? And then I'll tag on to that of, if you go, you're not out of state, but you can't make it that day. Do you trust video walkthroughs?
Yeah, I would do video walkthroughs. But what you want to do is, if you're purchasing out of state, are you purchasing in a random state, or are you purchasing somewhere where you have boots on the ground? Who asked that, Stephanie and Patricia?
Yes.
Do you have boots on the ground where you're buying?
No.
Why are you buying there?
We're not buying anywhere yet. We just we're.
But you asked the question, so I'm curious.
Yes, because we are considering out-of-state investing, just for it ends up being a little bit cheaper, nicer houses, things like that. So that's, we're gathering our knowledge on out-of-state investing. So
okay, great.
That was it.
So I work with a lot of out-of-state investors and even out of the country. I work with people in Canada who are purchasing here as well. But I have a lot of people who call me from New York, California, the DC area, Jersey, who invest in Erie, where I am at, because the barrier to entry is so low to get a cash flowing property. And we have the cash flow in our area. So we don't have the ups and downs of appreciation markets like a San Francisco, a Nashville, Tampa. We are a very, very, very steady cash flow market. So what I recommend is, if you're looking out of state, you want to buy somewhere that you either grew up, where you want a vacation, where you want to retire, or where you have boots on the ground. Okay. So it's a little bit more difficult to buy something that's a bigger renovation in a different state. So what I would recommend is buy something that's maybe just lipstick, and then you start building your contractors that way. You find out, okay, can this person show up and change 3 light fixtures and paint a wall for me? If they can, yes. All right, so then the next project, maybe you have them do a little more and a little more. So you're stress testing them. You don't want to go in and buy a property that needs a full gut, and then you're trying to manage all the plumbers, the HVAC, all the general people, the subs, and there's so many moving parts. I wouldn't even do that for myself in an area that I live starting out. So if you can find a lipstick renovation, and by lipstick, it's just making it a little prettier. I put some lipstick on it, paint and light fixtures and flooring. If you can do those things and clean it, that's what I would recommend, because you can find carpet providers everywhere. They're going to put it in. But if you're trying to find like jack of all trades handyman person who would do stuff, that's going to take a little while for you to find in your area. But if you know someone there, they might know somebody. Or if it's somewhere that you vacation often and you want to retire, when you're vacationing there, you can look for people and work with people. So that's why you want to look in those types of areas, because you're more likely to be invested in finding those contacts, because that's where you want to be. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What other questions do you have?
We have sorry to interrupt, we have about 7 minutes left, so keep asking your questions. But if there's any questions that don't get answered tonight, feel free to send them to us, and we will make sure Dorothy gets them and responds back.
So how do you decide when you're going to turn a property into an Airbnb? So what determines your thought process between, hey, I'm going to rent this property, or I'm just going to turn it into an Airbnb investment?
Great question. A little bit out of the scope of what we're talking about because we're generally on BRRRRs, but I do Airbnbs as well. It depends. You need to know the money, the income. Like, are you a seasonal market? Or are you a year-round market? How many days do you have to have filled in that property at your rent rate to make it worth being an Airbnb over a market rate annual rental? So if you only need 1 month to make what you would make in 1 year as an Airbnb, hell yeah, I'm doing it. But if you need to have it rented 6 months out of the year to make what you would make in a year, I don't know, that's a lot of turnover and cleaning, and then you have to provide all the furniture, and there's a lot more, it's a lot more management intensive. And then different municipalities may tax you as a hotel, so your taxing structure may be different. You may have an extra tax because you are doing short term. And then you have municipalities that are not allowing Airbnbs, that are cracking down on it. So there's several more things that you're going to have to look at and analyze when looking at that. I'm not saying it's bad, because I know a lot of people who do it, they do it successfully. I mean, I still have Airbnb, but I Airbnb house hack. So I have people who stay with me from Airbnb over 30 days in my personal home still. And I've been doing this for 14 years and I still house hack. I just, so I get to meet a lot of people and I love to travel. And since I can't travel, I bring the travelers to me. So, yeah. And I'm going to put in the notes my email address. So if anybody ever wants to drop me a line, I do strategy calls too, an hour strategy call. So if you're like, oh, I really want to do flips and BRRRRs and this, and you're trying to figure out where you should go and what you need, if you just need some of that calming zen to help you figure out what strategy you want, I'd be more than happy to do that. And I do coaching and mentoring. I don't take on a lot of people because I still do real estate full time. But that's something that could be talked about later, but I'd be happy to do a strategy call with anybody who needs, thank you, who needs me. And then this is my email address too.
So with that, Dorothy, thank you so much.
Yes,
This is, I don't know about
definitely.
you guys, but I unfortunately had to leave my notebook over there, but probably had like 3 pages front and back full of notes. That was extremely valuable, but I knew bringing you in that you would bring so much value to everybody and information. Like she said, please check out her website. She does the coaching. She's an awesome coach. I didn't realize that when I first was talking to her and interviewing her, she was going to be coaching me in it. So she was super helpful, which I was very impressed with. So I highly recommend that. But again, if you guys have questions, please feel free, email her. If you don't feel comfortable, feel free to email me or post them on the Facebook page, and we can get them answered. However you guys feel comfortable with, just do that. Check out our Facebook page, our meetup. And then, Dorothy, do you have any Facebook pages or anything like that that they can follow?
I do. I actually have 2. I have the Sisterhood of Real Estate Investors, and I just started a new one called Private Lending Ladies. And what that is for, it's specifically for people who are looking to learn how to lend privately or are looking to learn how to work with private lenders, like find and impress private lenders. So it's very specific and it's new. So there will be content coming on that. But I just started that the other day because I saw that there was a need for it, but I wanted to be ladies only. The market is saturated with private lending men. And ladies,
Dorothy,
I
can
know
you
you all
say-
got some money.
Awesome. Well,
Can
that's
you
what
say
we're
the
about.
private
We wanna,
lending-
like you said.
Here, I'll put the
the link in the the link in the chat. That would be awesome.
if you just put Private Lending Ladies in Facebook, it'll come up, and just request to join.
Cool. Well, with that, thank you so much again for all of your time. We really appreciate you
Thank
coming
you.
down.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Everybody, we will see you hopefully next month. And thank you for joining. See you, everyone. Have a great night.
Bye.